Right. So I asked you, did you follow it? You said yes. And then I asked you, did you follow it more specifically? And you said no. In one day, you can fuck up your entire diet. It's not that hard. Let's say that everybody's not on steroids, just for a hypothetical sake. Okay, well, what's the next thing you move to? Well, they all have better genetics than me. Okay, great. You're right. Congratulations. You'll never achieve what you want. Okay, well, what are you going to do? I did my first app date ever, and I had a girl that I met, and I was like, oh, you are horrible. I just wish I could just disappear. I never want to talk to you again.
You mentioned on a recent podcast with Tom Bilyeu that you don't have rules. So yeah. I, for example, quite often end up working up until midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and basically fucking up my sleep schedule because I have too much freedom, right? Because I'm self-employed. So how do you kind of strike that balance between freedom and discipline, you know, if you're driven and you want to accomplish big things?
I think it's a micro macro look. Like it's kind of 80-20. Like if you know that when you stay up late, like there are times when I will gas it and go past my red line in terms of work. And I know that I'm eating into tomorrow. But if I'm like in a flow and I'm crushing it and the muse shows up and the muse wants to work, then I work. You know what I mean? But if there's some days on the flip side where I wake up and I just feel foggy as shit and I just like, for whatever reason, I ate too much Mexican last night and I don't have it that day, then I might call it earlier. Like the idea of me pushing through and punishing when it comes to the type of work I do. Now, if I were doing a more brute force work, then I would care less. You know what I mean? If it was just like, if I was just doing reach outs, I was doing cold calls, I was training, personal training sessions, I was cutting hair, I'm just going to brute force my way through it because I don't need to have higher brain function. And that's not an insult. I'm just saying like, you're not like thinking of creative things. You know what I mean? You're working the work. But when it comes to like writing or making presentations or communication of some sort, it's more, I try and optimize around how can I maximize over a week, how much flow state I can be in so I can just get the most total quality output.
Yeah.
So it's not about rules. It's more like which of these things has the highest likelihood of getting me the most.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Cool, man. That's been really, really helpful. I just want to bring AJ on for a second. He's got a question about business and dating.
Spicy topic. So my question is actually inspired, Alex, by a video on Eye of the Tiger. Really strong video. And the train of thought of going all in. My question is, how do you juggle business and dating when you were single? I know you mentioned previously, you know, when you did it, you're a millionaire, did when you broke. It's a human need. I feel it's always been a cycle of focus and if it goes well, dating goes to shit. Do you have any frameworks or advice around structuring dating?
Yeah. I would say there's seasons. And I think you just got to give yourself grace around it. You know what I mean? Like if there were seasons where I wasn't actively looking for anyone and people just walked into my life. And there were seasons where like when I had my gyms, I had customers walking in every day. They knew people. Like there was just more, I had more surface area of luck in terms of exposure of meeting people. Once I went to multiple locations, I was actually at my house all the time trying to manage all locations. I didn't really go to the locations as much, especially during like customer hours. And so then I had way fewer like exposure to girls. And so then I got on the apps and started going on dates and stuff. And so for me, I just made it work that during my lunch break was when I would, you know, swipe and do my calls because I just worked at like leads. And so I would just have the same 2 to 3 exchanges and then immediately say, hey, can I just give you a call? I'm on my way to lunch. We'll learn more about each other in a 10-minute phone call than we will on 5 days of texting. And 4 out of 5 times they would say, sure, thank God, somebody's actually taking control, blah, 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 blah. I'd hop on the phone, ask them, set script, like, what's your goal right now? You know, label them with a problem over their past experiences. And then, you know, open loop. Okay, cool. Well, that sounds interesting. Sounds like our goals are aligned. I think maybe we'll help you out. You know, how about we talk about this over drinks or whatever? And then if it just sounded like not a good date or person, I would just not do it. And so my biggest, you know, hack was just how many dates I said no to after a 5 or 10 minute call rather than wasting 2 hours.
Paid in full.
Yeah. But that way I did my first app date ever. And I had a girl that I met and I was like, oh, you are horrible. I just wish I could just disappear. I never want to talk to you again. And then I was like, I will never not have a conversation with somebody over the phone prior to a date. And so that's how I did it from that point on.
Love that. Switching gears for a sec to fitness. You don't have to answer this one if you're not comfortable, but it is probably the number one question that I got from everyone. So I'm just going to read it word for word. So this guy says, Alex, you look like Hercules if you ate a tank. Obviously, your diet and your workouts are on point, but I still haven't been able to achieve a physique like that in over a decade of training. I know many fitness influencers are on gear and lie about it, which is super demotivating because they're selling unrealistic expectations. I wish more people would be honest because I don't see anything wrong with juicing at all. And I don't know why there's such a stigma around it. So I just wanted to know, have you taken any performance enhancements, or do you just have GOAT genetics? Huge respect either way. You're an idol.
Yeah, I'll answer. I'll give the answer in a second, but I want to address the thing that I think matters more here, which is, why does it matter? Because let's say that everybody's not on steroids, just for a hypothetical sake. Okay, well, what's the next thing you move to? Well, they all have better genetics than me. Okay, great. You're right. Congratulations. You'll never achieve what you want. Now what? Okay, well, what are you going to do? Well, you probably still need to train harder to use whatever genetics you got. You probably need to eat better, no matter what genetics you got, to get more out of what you have. And so, like, whether someone else is on gear or not changes nothing, because even if they weren't on gear, I might have GOAT genetics and you might not, which then becomes the new thing that you get to blame. And I say this with love, and I knew that I saw the message they sent me earlier. I know that this was out of love, but I say this like very genuinely, like, control the controllables. Like, what difference in your behavior does me being on gear or not being on gear, or having GOAT genetics or not having GOAT genetics, what does that change about your behavior? Why would you allow it to change your behavior? And so at the end of the day, if you want to get jacked, then you do the maximum amount of things that jacked people do. Now, I don't know how hard you train. There's plenty of guys I know who've been training for a decade that look the same. I also see them in the gym. They don't train that hard, right? Mm-hmm. If you've ever trained with an IFBB pro, right? If you trained with people who compete in fitness, they'll probably expose you to a much higher level of training, right? Like if you're like, well, I try to eat well. Well, I would ask this question when I had fitness clients. I would say, okay, did you follow the meal plan? They would always say yes. And I'd say, okay, let me ask differently. 7 days a week, you had 3 meals a day that you were supposed to eat and 2 shakes, right? This is what I would make for Gen Pop. It's not like an espouse. I'm just, big disclaimer. Say of those 7 days a week, so 3 meals, 2 shakes, 7 days a week, how many days were you perfect on that? And they'd be like, oh, at least 4. And I'd be like, right. So I asked you, did you follow it? You said yes. And then I asked you, did you follow it more specifically? And you said no. In one day, you can fuck up your entire diet. It's not that hard. You have a 500 calorie a day surplus, and then one day you eat 2,000 extra, you break even, right? And then you're surprised that you're not looking different. And so, like, remember, I came from this world. So, like, I have more charge around it because I've had thousands of client conversations around weight loss and fitness stuff. But no, so I'm on TRT now. I've been on TRT since I was 28. I also had state records before I went on TRT, and I was 235 pounds. And Muscle and Fitness wrote an article about me being natural when I was natural. And so I am no longer pure natty. I'm on TRT. I take 75 milligrams a week, and that's what I do.
Yeah. It's a low dosage anyway. So there we go. For the record, for everyone's asking.
Yeah. And when they tested it, I think on TRT, I think my testosterone was like 900.
Boom.
So there you go. Now, the thing is now what do you do with that?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Like, now what do you do with that? It just doesn't change.
I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I know. I say this out of love for for the person in the audience who asked that question. I say that out of love because it's, what does it change about your behavior? Nothing. And I was jacked as shit before this when I was 235 pounds, which is bigger than I am now when I was natural. I trained harder and I ate more.
The fundamentals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Killer. One last question, super quick. James, bring us home.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yep. Shoot.
Alex, lovely to meet you. Massive inspiration. Love the event. Love the book. My question is, I have a e-commerce coaching company for beginners. My question for you is, the company is growing mainly because of me speaking and doing ads and funnels. I'm the face of it. That said, when I get to a point where, say, around $1 million a month, I want to be in a position where I can create leaders for it. Other people in America, Europe, who become their own face like me for the company to help it grow that way, kind of like you did with Gym Launch. I was wondering what the process is to create leaders like that to grow a company.
Okay, I'm going to give you 3 directions. So direction 1 is you can scale via events as a big part of your delivery. So if you look at the biggest kind of education businesses that are in the space, so we're talking like 9-figure businesses, almost exclusively use events because scaling coaching teams is very difficult. So that's number 1. Okay. Number 2, like Gym Launch is obviously a very big company. What we did was because we were hyper niched, we could productize almost every part of the service. And so that allowed me to take people who wouldn't otherwise be you or me or my face or whatever and still deliver the same level of value. That's the big problem, is that the more general you are, the more impossible it becomes to standardize value creation. And that's the big advantage of niching down. So you have to productize it. The third kind of bucket here that you can do, or like the consideration, is that You can then bring people on if you think they are exceptional and basically have people who run P&Ls of kind of departments, right? So for example, at Gym Launch, we had an agency service, which was part of what we did for gyms. And so you can have someone who is in charge of that department, but it basically runs as a separate company. Now it's under the umbrella and you cross sell and all that kind of stuff, but you really bring a leader in who's exceptional and they get compensated off the P&L of that micro business. And so like, if you look at Jeff Bezos with Amazon, Amazon is barely even a company. It's just a conglomeration of many, 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 many businesses. And so he even calls his CEOs, that's what he calls them, even though they're just employees, but they still run their own books. They run their own profit and loss statements. And that way you can incentivize them like owners. And so the key is to translate your question. It's like, how do I get people to act like owners in a business that they don't own?
Genius.
And so the answer is that you try and get as close to ownership compensation, at least in the manner that you attract them and compensate them as possible.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much. I'll look into those.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Alex, you're a legend.
You're a
Thank you so
legend. Thank you, guys. And thank you guys so much for your audience. It means more than I can say. This is a very small token of my appreciation. It means the world to me. And especially you guys, we're coming from across the ocean at crazy times to attend. It means that much more. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.
Big love. We'll chat
Thanks,
soon.
See ya.
Thanks, Alex.